And Congressman Maloney joins me now. Welcome back to Meet the Press 2 days before the election, sir.
Good to be with you.
Well, let me start with this. What constitutes a good night for Democrats on Tuesday?
We're going to hold this majority. That constitutes a good night. We're going to defend our mainstream democratic values against the threats to our democracy. We're going to protect women's reproductive freedom and voting rights. We're going to give you cheaper prices for gas and groceries, health care and housing. And we're going to give you safer streets by funding good local policing with accountability, but also doing something about gun violence. And that is a plan for the future. And because our candidates have real plans, they're going to do better than people think on Tuesday night.
Do you acknowledge, though, that all the data seems to point in the other direction?
Oh, look, I think the poll you just showed shows it's basically tied with the numbers in 2018, which, if I recall, was a pretty good year for Democrats. I think this race is razor close. And I think everybody who cares about the extremism in this MAGA movement, the racism, the anti-Semitism, the violence, needs to get out and vote. And that's not just Democrats. That's independents and fair-minded Republicans who watch the January 6 hearings, who know what we're up against, who listen to Republicans oppose things like Social Security and Medicare, want to put it on the chopping block every 5 years. That's your next guest, by the way. That's his plan. And we've got a plan to cap seniors' out-of-pocket costs in Medicare. There are big differences. I want everybody to go out and vote.
If you lose your race, does that mean this was a wave?
Oh, come on. I've always had a tough race, Chuck. I beat a Republican to have this seat. I'm the first gay person ever elected to Congress from New York. I'm raising an interracial family in a county Donald Trump won in 2016 by 20 points. It has always been improbable that I would serve in the Congress. I have to go out and earn it every 2 years. And
so you don't believe your loss,
because
if you happen to lose, you don't think that somehow is part of the national wave, that's something that you got sort of rolled out that way?
Well, I guess what I'm not going to do is play hypotheticals with you when we're 2 days out from an election, and I've won five times in a district where everybody said I couldn't. I mean, if we were having this conversation in 2012, you would have made fun of me for even running, because I was running against a Republican incumbent with a bunch of money, and nobody thought I could win. So people like me weren't supposed to serve in Congress from New York until I did it. So with all due respect, what Democrats are going to do right now is we're going to go out and fight with everything we've got. For seniors who need cost capped in Medicare, for people worried about gun violence in our schools, for people who want to have a real plan to go forward together without the anger and the fear and the hatred, fighting for women's reproductive freedom and voting rights. Well, that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to let the pundits kind of make predictions. We're going to let the voters speak on Tuesday.
I want to talk about a couple of messaging things that we've seen pop up. There's a lot of blue state Democrats on the House level that are in these competitive seats, Oregon, New York, California. And I'm curious, do you think the abortion message doesn't work as well in blue states because voters don't believe it'll ever be illegal in their state, but it does work pretty well for some of your red state Democrats? Have you noticed this yourself?
Well, of course, when abortion is literally being taken away by an initiative like in Kansas, of course people are going to pay more attention. But of course, Pat Ryan won a race none of you thought he could win in upstate New York, leaning into protecting women's reproductive freedom right here in New York. My own opponent pretends there's no threat to it in New York, but of course he voted to ban abortion when he was in the assembly. And if he had his way, every state in the country could ban it for any reason without exceptions. So the threats are real. If these guys control Congress, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to try to pass a national abortion ban. And bear in mind, 75% of the Republicans now in the Congress support a national abortion ban. That means California and New York and other big blue states are on the chopping block too. And so, of course, they want to disguise it and try to confuse or lull voters into a false sense of security. But when the wolf comes to the door, it's wearing sheep's clothing. And that's what voters in blue states need to understand.
Do you believe the Democrats should have worked sooner on getting a better crime message? It's an argument Stan Greenberg, Bill Clinton's longtime pollster, has made and said that Democrats didn't learn, even though many in the party said the right things about avoiding the phrase defund the police, that there wasn't enough done fixing the problems that clearly showed up in 2020 House races. What say you?
Well, let's look at the record. I mean, for one thing, we passed the most important gun safety legislation in 28 years. Stood up to the NRA, stood up to the big gun lobbies, and no Republicans, except a handful, were willing to help. That's really important. In addition to that, we've passed the most important local police funding, $300 million over the next 5 years out of the House. That's called the Invest to Protect Act. And if you look at our frontline candidates, my goodness, whether it's Stephen Horsford in Nevada, who's put billions of dollars through his legislation into violence prevention initiatives that are evidence-based, or you're talking about Matt Cartwright in Pennsylvania, who's been a leader in getting cop grants out there to hire and train more police officers. In my own district, I've brought back $7 million for local police departments, including new technologies like ShotSpotter technology, like license plate readers, like body cameras. We've got a record of delivering for public safety, and we're proud of that record.
Yes, and there's a bill, though, that was going to be a pretty big bill that every single national law enforcement group supported. It was called the Community-Oriented Policing Services Bill. COPS was short of it. Let me show you the bill's co-sponsors here, because it's a who's who of who Republicans are targeting in these House races. Tom O'Halloran, Arizona 1, Alyssa Slotkin, Michigan 7, Angie Craig, Minnesota 2, Elaine Luria, Virginia 2, and Abigail Spanberger, Virginia 7. Was it a mistake not getting this bill passed? You could have gotten it passed. These members of Congress needed it, and they're all on the front line.
I just told you those members were in the lead on passing $300 million of funding for police departments under 125 officers. That's every precinct and every town and cop in my district is in a department under 125 officers. Those members took the lead. And so the fact is that together with the gun safety legislation, which the cops demand because they don't want to roll up to a scene and have a kid with an AR-15, we have done real things. Now let's contrast that to what our opponents have done, which is nothing on gun violence, which is nothing on supporting our police. My own opponent cut police budgets in Westchester County when he had the chance. I mean, my goodness, at some point the record should matter here, and we've got a strong record of supporting police.
Final question here. Midterm results are very much always connected to presidential job rating. How much responsibility do you think President Biden has for this political environment?
I think the president gets a bum rap. By the way, he's been a leader on public safety his whole career. He's also fixing our roads and our bridges. He's bringing jobs back from China. He's capping seniors' out-of-pocket costs in Medicare. He took on the big drug companies. If you want to know why all this dark money's coming into these races, because we took on the big drug companies. He's helping our veterans with extraordinary health care, $250 billion. He's done gun safety legislation. And let's not forget the rescue plan that saved every small business and restaurant and live venue in the country. I think the guy gets a bum rap. I think he's working through the damage of the Trump years and the pandemic, and he's not getting enough credit for it. Now, we've got more to do, and he'll be the first one to tell you that.
You know, based on all of your answers to me, it sounds like you don't believe Democrats did anything wrong. You believe if you don't do well, it's simply you had bad messaging or you didn't communicate it right. Is that your basic take here?
Well, first of all, neither you or I know what's going to happen on Tuesday, so what do you say we wait to see? But secondly, look, what I'm telling you is we're not perfect, but we are responsible adults who didn't attack the Capitol on January 6th, didn't try to whitewash it. Don't pretend we're for law enforcement and then ignore 140 cops getting beat up on that horrible day. We're not perfect, but we've got a plan for gun violence and for bringing jobs back from China. You don't like it? What's yours? We took on the big drug companies. The other side won't do that because they're awash in big drug company money. No, we're not perfect, Chuck. We've got all kinds of things we can do better. But we are responsible adults who believe in this democracy and who are fighting for a better future.
Sean Patrick Maloney, chair of the DCCC. He's on the ballot himself. Be safe on the campaign trail, sir. Appreciate you coming on in these closing days to share your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.